Kevin, do you have any idea what you're talking about? After all, Miss Anderson is an expert. She knew very well that the Anderson family had a lot of experience in the antique business and that Phoebe had an excellent reputation in the Chicago area as an appraiser. However, what happened next shocked everyone. Phoebe said very calmly, "I trust in Kevin's ability. He definitely wouldn't steer me wrong on something like this." Hearing this, Lily was instantly stunned. She'd been with Kevin for 3 years and had no idea that he knew how to appraise antiques. Why would Phoebe, who came from such a distinguished family, trust him so much? Kevin looked down at the bracelet in his hand and said, "Has everyone here heard of the jewelry that was found in King Tut's tomb?" They all nodded as they listened to hear what Kevin would say next. Well, there were many other artifacts found in countless other Egyptian tombs around the same time. I believe that this bracelet was made by a master artisan based on a lost bracelet from one of those excavations. The original bracelet was intended to give the wearer fertility and immortality. That's why it was left with the deceased in the tomb for the afterlife. I've only seen sketches of the original, but I believe that this reproduction was made with the same intent and the same materials. Together with the original bracelet, the pair of them would be worth quite a bit more, perhaps as much as $3 million. When the onlookers heard this, they immediately started to chatter. The people who had mocked Kevin earlier felt very awkward. Lily also felt rather awkward. She couldn't help but wonder why Phoebe trusted him so much while she, his wife, had questioned his ability. She stared blankly at Kevin and suddenly felt that she had never really understood him. "Okay, transfer $25,000 to this gentleman," Phoebe said excitedly. One of her employees immediately transferred the money to the routing number he'd given them. "Who said I only want $25,000? The man suddenly said. "I want $1 million for the bracelet. You still owe me $975,000. "Sir, how can you do this? I've already transferred the money to you and our transaction is complete."
"Didn't you hear what he said? The two bracelets together could be worth at least $3 million, the man greedily said. "Even though there's only one now, it's got to be worth at least $1 million.
Everyone started berating the man for going back on his word after agreeing on a price. The man didn't care what they thought and said,
"My price is $1 million. If you don't want to pay that, then the deal is off."
Phoebe was getting more and more upset. From what Kevin had said, the bracelet would only have more value if it were paired with the original, which had been lost 100 years ago. By itself, it was just a curiosity. "In that case, have our money transferred back to our account and leave our store immediately. She would rather not earn any money at all than put up with this nonsense."
"I have a rule when I'm doing business. Once the money is in my pocket, I never take it out again."
He had an evil smile on his face and was clearly making things difficult for Phoebe. The crowd of antique dealers and other onlookers were exasperated by this man's behavior. How could he refuse to return the money if the sale was off? Shouldn't he be arrested for this? Phoebe gave in to her anger and turned to the store's guards. "Security, arrest him," she said loudly. Kevin didn't expect something like this to happen. With a sullen look on his face, he walked over to the man and grabbed his shoulder.
"Let me go," he yelled. "Do you know who I am? I'm Reuben Cook. Maybe you've heard of my cousin Drake Cook."
He pushed at Kevin to break free, but failed. As he struggled, some fruit fell out of his backpack. "What the heck is this?" Kevin said when he saw the fruit.
"Do you think you can bully me just because there are so many of you? If anyone lays a hand on me, I'll call my cousin. If you're not careful, he'll come down here and tear this place apart," he said confidently. The room was silent, as everyone wondered what would happen next. "I don't care who owns this place. You need to play by my rules," Reuben griped. "You're nothing compared to Drake."
"Get him out of here," Phoebe said angrily.
"How dare you touch me?"
Reuben yelled as he finally broke free from Kevin's grip and took a step back. He quickly took out his phone and tapped on one of his contacts. While the call was connecting, he said to them,
"You're in deep shit now."
"Drake, I'm surrounded," Reuben said frantically. "Send someone down to Anderson Antiques to save me." Everyone could hear Drake's deep voice as he asked, "What have you done this time?" The onlookers got nervous when they realized that Reuben was asking someone like Drake for help. What a mess they were in. Some of them were already making a move for the door.
"Nobody's leaving. You're all screwed now,"
Reuben said arrogantly. Reuben exaggerated everything and tried to make himself look like a victim.
"Drake, I came here to sell 2 antiques, but now everyone has me surrounded and they want me to pay them before they'll let me leave." "I'll be right there,"
everyone could hear Drake shout over the phone.
"I want to see who has the courage to try something like this."
As it turns out, Drake had asked his cousin Reuben to take the bust and the bracelet to Anderson's antique to have them appraised. If he liked the price, he was prepared to sell them. Reuben ended the call and warned Phoebe,
"If you have any sense, you'll give me the full $1 million. Unlike me, Drake has a nasty temper."
Phoebe was so furious that she couldn't speak. Everyone started to encourage her to accept the deal to make Reuben go away. Some of them even blamed Kevin for putting them in this predicament. But nobody was willing to ask Reuben to return the store's money. They all started glaring at Kevin. If he hadn't said that the bracelet could be worth a lot more, Reuben wouldn't be demanding $1 million now. Phoebe didn't know what to do. $25,000 wasn't much money for the store, but this kind of behavior was intolerable. After a few minutes, a couple of black SUVs screeched to a halt in front of the store's entrance. Drake rushed into the room, followed by his bodyguards.
"Who's been bullying my cousin?"
Aside from Kevin, everyone else in the room was trembling with fear. Reuben quickly ran over to Drake and pointed at the crowd.
"They said they'd have me arrested if I didn't sell the bust and the bracelet to them." "How could this be?" Drake asked sternly. "Who's in charge here?"
Phoebe's face turned pale. Just as she was about to face Drake, Kevin put his hand on her shoulder and took a step forward.
"Drake, it isn't him, it's that woman,"
Reuben said as he pointed at Phoebe. But Drake didn't answer him. He stared blankly at Kevin, and his expression turned from anger to confusion to fear. "Drake, you got a lot of guts bringing your men in here to cause trouble," Kevin said without flinching. As soon as he said this, everyone started to panic, especially the ones who knew Kevin. They didn't want to get drawn into one of his fights. Reuben snarled at Kevin.
"Don't think you're so great just because you bought some of my stuff."
Before Reuben could say anything else, Drake gave him a backhand to the face.
"Why did you hit me?"
Reuben said in shock.
"You're embarrassing me."
Drake scolded him as he pushed his cousin aside.
"I'll deal with you later."
Then Drake took a deep breath. Phoebe bit her lip nervously when she saw Drake walking towards Kevin. However, what happened next shocked everyone in the room. Drake apologized politely to Kevin.
"I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. I had no idea this would happen. My cousin can get carried away sometimes."
They were all wondering how Drake knew Kevin. Not only that, he just apologized instead of wiping the floor with him. "So, did you send this over here?" Kevin asked in a menacing tone. This definitely had an effect on Drake, and it showed in his expression. He turned around and shouted at his cousin.
"Get over here, you—"
Reuben walked over to him, covering his face to try and protect himself from another powerful slap.
"Hurry up and apologize to Mr. Williams,"
Drake said as he pulled Reuben by the ear and made him stand in front of Kevin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. I was wrong to do that," he stammered.
Kevin glared at Reuben and then turned his eyes to Drake. "Drake, did you really send your cousin in here to strong-arm the Andersons and take their money?" Kevin asked with a steely look in his eyes. "He just told us that you were coming here to tear this place apart."
"Mr. Williams, this is just a big misunderstanding."
Drake was on the verge of tears. "Misunderstanding? I'm the one who appraised those 2 antiques. Are you saying there's something wrong with my judgment? Do you want President Anderson to throw me out of here?"
"Seriously, Mr. Williams, I didn't expect things to turn out like this," Drake replied with an awkward smile.
Nobody could believe they were watching this. Seeing that Kevin hadn't accepted his apology, Drake gritted his teeth and slapped Reuben again.
"Look at the trouble you've got me into," he yelled. "Mr. Williams, is there anything I can do to make you accept my apology?"
Drake pleaded. "You shouldn't apologize to me. This is President Anderson's store, and your cousin has caused her a lot of trouble today. You really should be apologizing to her." Before Kevin had finished speaking, Drake had walked over to stand in front of Phoebe. What was he going to do now? Drake walked up to Phoebe and smiled apologetically.
"President Anderson, this is all my fault. Sometimes Reuben can be obnoxious, and I should have known better than to send him to such a fine establishment. Please accept my sincere apologies."
"That's a very nice apology, but it really should come from him," Phoebe said as she pointed to Reuben. Drake grabbed Reuben and shook him.
"Didn't you hear her? Open that big mouth of yours and apologize to President Anderson."
You could tell that he was in pain, but Reuben forced himself to speak.
"I'm sorry, ma'am," he mumbled. "Is everything settled now, Mr. Williams?" Drake asked politely.
"We're good," Kevin replied. Then he turned around and looked at Reuben. "I want you to leave that fruit. Do you have any objections?"
"Of course not,"
Reuben said as he placed it on the table in front of Kevin. "How did you get this?" Kevin asked as he picked up the fruit and examined it. He kept turning the black fruit over and over until he was sure that he wasn't mistaken. According to the book that he'd taken from Marshall's office, this was an incredibly rare fruit. Whoever had put it in the bin at the health food store certainly had no idea what it was. It probably just looked like a black diamond apple, which isn't quite as rare. But that's not what it was. Actually, it was an important ingredient for refining numerous herbal medicines that were described in the book.
"Well, are you going to tell him or aren't you?"
Drake reprimanded his cousin.
"Mr. Williams, I found this at a health food store on Cicero Avenue. It looked interesting because it was darker than the rest of the fruit. It was the only one like this. I figured I'd let it ripen and eat it later,"
Reuben answered timidly. "All right, Drake. Take him away. And don't let this happen again."
"Thank you, sir."
Drake felt as if he'd gotten a presidential pardon. He grabbed Reuben by the elbow and rushed out of the store, followed by his bodyguards, who were careful not to disturb anything on the way out. Kevin didn't stay long either. He said goodbye to Phoebe and led Lily and Rachel out to the sidewalk. "What's the deal with you and Drake? Why does he respect you so much?" Lily stared at Kevin and asked. "It's because he knows I'm very good friends with Mitchell Cook." Lily looked at Kevin and suddenly felt that her seemingly useless husband, whom everyone looked down on, was somehow different. Just then, Phoebe ran out of the store chasing after them. "Kevin, I really have to thank you for this," she said gratefully. "It was nothing. Just remember to give me a raise," Kevin said with a smile. "It's lunchtime now. How about I treat everyone to a meal at my house?" Before Kevin could say anything, Lily smiled and said, "That would be wonderful. Thank you for the invitation." Lily thought that it might help the Jones family if she could develop a good relationship with Phoebe. After all, the Anderson family was very well respected in Chicago. Phoebe gave Kevin the address of her family's estate. It was about an hour and a half from the antique store. When he got out of the car, Kevin shook his head in disbelief. The estate was located in the western suburbs, facing towards the east. After everyone sat down on the sofa, Lily looked around the large, tastefully decorated room. Then she asked with some hesitation, "President Anderson, forgive me for asking, but why don't you have any antiques in your home?" "It's very simple," Kevin said as the three women turned to look at him. "You know about this, too?" Lily asked in surprise. "As it turns out, I do. While Phoebe's family specializes in antiques, they prefer not to bring any into their home," Kevin explained. "It may sound superstitious, but they avoid bringing any objects into the house that might be haunted," he said very seriously. Lily and Rachel had their doubts about this explanation. Lily snickered a little and said, "Bull, you're just putting us on." "Actually, he's right," Phoebe said as she brought a tray of appetizers over from the sideboard. "My father told me the same thing. Antiques are beautiful, but we prefer to keep them at the store." They chatted for a while longer, and then Phoebe went into the kitchen to prepare their meal. Rachel and Lily got up and went into the kitchen to help her. Kevin took his glass of iced tea and leaned back on the sofa. But the sofa was a lot softer than he expected, and as he sank into it, he spilled his drink all over his tan pants. Kevin grabbed a few tissues in a hurry and tried to dry himself off. Just then, Phoebe walked out of the kitchen and asked him, "Kevin, do you like chili?" "What happened?" as she saw Kevin sitting there with a huge dark stain on his light-colored pants. "It's not what it looks like," Kevin tried to explain. Rachel and Lily rushed out when they heard all the commotion. "What's going on?" "How am I going to explain this? I swear it isn't what it looks like. I just spilled my iced tea. Don't you believe me?" Kevin almost wanted to die. The three women stared at him, unsure how to respond. "I'm going to the bathroom," Kevin said abruptly. Then he practically ran out of the room. "Just dry off as fast as you can and get back out here." Lily couldn't believe how embarrassing this was. She went back into the kitchen to keep chopping vegetables, thinking about the horrible first impression she was making on Phoebe. Suddenly, the front door was violently kicked open. "Who are you?" Phoebe asked in alarm. "Tie them up," Marshall shouted to his men as he looked around the room. "Kevin, where did you go? Come out now." Kevin, who was still in the bathroom trying to dry his pants, heard all of this and started to fear for his wife and friends. He thought to himself, "Is that Marshall? What's he doing here?" Marshall kicked the bathroom door open. "Marshall, what's come over you?" "So, you're still pretending, huh?" Marshall roared angrily. Then he threw a punch at Kevin. It was a powerful punch that could have knocked out someone twice his size. Kevin stepped just to the side as the punch passed him by. He could feel a blast of air against his face as Marshall ended up hitting the wall instead. Several cracks appeared on the spot where his fist landed. "Marshall, how dare you attack me?" Marshall suddenly looked behind him to make sure that nobody could hear him and lowered his voice. "I have to know. Where is the book you took from my office? Just give it back to me and I won't have you punished for impersonating the Night King." "What are you talking about? I can't possibly carry books around with me all day long," Kevin replied very calmly. "Aren't you going to hand it over?" Marshall said with a monstrous look in his eyes. "Those three women out there mean a lot to you, don't they? How about if I give them a fate worse than death?" "Is that a threat?" "Let's talk somewhere else," Marshall said as he pulled his fist back. They walked into one of the other rooms. As he went down the hall, Kevin could see Lily and the other two women tied up in chairs by the dining room table, surrounded by Marshall's men. Kevin didn't dare to fight back now that Marshall had taken his wife and friends hostage. After Kevin closed the door, Marshall asked in a bitter tone of voice, "Where's the book?" "I told you, I don't have it with me. Are you saying you don't want to hand it over?" Marshall said. Just as he was about to attack Kevin again, Marshall fell to the ground heavily and broke out in a cold sweat. Kevin relaxed when he saw the painful expression on Marshall's face. "Have you been poisoned?" Kevin asked with a slight frown. Marshall didn't answer Kevin's question. He felt like there were countless ants biting him from head to toe. Kevin walked over to Marshall and knelt down next to him to observe him for almost a minute. "An herbal did this to you, didn't it?" Kevin asked in surprise. "How do you know?" Marshall said in shock. Kevin knew which herbal pill Marshall had taken. While some of the herbal concoctions in the book could help someone with just one dose, others had to be taken over a period of time to have an effect. But this one had a very serious flaw. You had to take it every 6 months or you'd have a serious relapse and possibly die. The head of the Alliance did this in order to better control the members. "Marshall, if I can make an herbal pill that will help you, will you let us go?" He clearly remembered reading about this in the book. He remembered the recipe and knew that the black fruit he'd gotten earlier in the day was indispensable. It was an incredible coincidence, but Kevin wasn't worried about that right now. He needed to save Lily, Rachel, and Phoebe. "That's impossible. Only the head of the Alliance can make that," Marshall said in astonishment. "I don't care if you believe me or not. If you get the pill, will you let us go?" "All right, it's a deal," Marshall stammered. "You still have 2 hours before it gets critical," Kevin said to him. "I'll be back in a minute." After saying this, Kevin opened the window and climbed out. Then he went to his car and got the black fruit. Although Kevin was reluctant to help Marshall, this was the only way he could save Lily and the others. When Kevin got back, he took Marshall to the kitchen. Half an hour later, Kevin had finished refining the pill that would act as an antidote to save Marshall from the effects of the pill that the head of the Alliance had given him. 5 or 6 minutes later, Marshall looked a lot better and slowly got up from the kitchen floor. "You'll be fine in another few minutes. Now, can you let us go?" If Marshall hadn't kidnapped Lily, Rachel, and Phoebe, and if he hadn't come in there with so many men, Kevin wouldn't have used the black fruit to make the antidote for him. Marshall looked Kevin in the eye and begged him, "Sir, please save my men. They've been given the same pill. Without the antidote that you just made, they'll all die within 3 days." Marshall's original plan was to get the book back and return it to the Alliance in exchange for the herbal medication that he needed. But it turned out to be very difficult for him to find Kevin. First, he went to Dominic Archer's family, then the Jones family, and then the Williams family, one after another, but he couldn't track him down until today. At this point, even if he had the book, he wouldn't be able to get to the Alliance headquarters and then return in time to save his men. Kevin frowned and interrupted Marshall. "While I admire your loyalty to your men, I really can't save them." "What do you mean, Mr. Williams? If you could make the antidote for me, I'm sure you can do the same for them." "Unfortunately, to make another batch, I would need more of the black fruit. As you can see, I used all that I had to make your pill. I just found it by chance today, and I have no idea where to get more on such short notice," Kevin said helplessly. "Are you talking about the black fruit that looks almost completely black and has a faint fragrance? You know about it? Mr. Williams, they're really not all that hard to find. I'll send one of my men to get some for you right away." Marshall was very excited and relieved. Kevin got excited too. If Marshall really had a source for that black fruit he needed to make his pills, it would be a huge help to him. At this point, Kevin knew that making enough of the pill to help Marshall's men would be a piece of cake. Knowing that Kevin would help him save his men made Marshall feel a little ashamed of his behavior toward him. He had almost harmed someone who could be a valuable asset to his organization. All they had to do now was to wait for his aide to come back with the black fruit. "Mr. Williams, thanks to your skill, you've given me and my men a new lease on life. From now on, you can count on our loyalty," Marshall said sincerely. "There's no need for that. As long as you stay out of my way, we'll be fine." He really didn't want to have anything to do with the Alliance now that he knew about its violent and sinister reputation. "Before we go, I have some advice for you. You have an unusual skill that's highly valued by some very rich and powerful individuals. The ability to make these herbal supplements could draw attention from the wrong people." He continued in a very serious tone. "In order to get their hands on your methods, they would be willing to use any means necessary. You have to think of your family. Make sure that you're well protected. Otherwise, you may end up in the hands of some vile people." Marshall suddenly stopped and said to Kevin ominously, "Mr. Williams, please think about it carefully." Kevin frowned when he heard this. If Marshall was trying to scare him, he was doing a good job. Kevin had gotten a taste of what was going on behind the scenes in business, politics, and the criminal underworld. He had to do something to keep Lily and their family safe. "Thank you for your advice," Kevin said appreciatively. "I'm glad you're going to listen to me," Marshall said candidly. "Now I'll take my men to get more of the black fruit for you." After he said this, Marshall headed out the door. Kevin returned to the dining room and saw that Lily, Rachel, and Phoebe were still tied up. "Are you okay?" he asked them anxiously. "Kevin, what's going on? Who were those men?" Lily asked curiously. "Nothing to worry about. They were looking for the wrong person, but I straightened it all out," Kevin said calmly. Before Kevin had a chance to untie the 3 women, they all heard the sound of the front door opening. It was Truman Anderson, Phoebe's father. He stood in the doorway with a shocked expression on his face. "Kevin, what are you doing here?" Then, as he looked over and saw his daughter and the other 2 women tied up with belts, Truman became infuriated. "What the hell is going on here?" Truman shouted at the top of his lungs. "Truman, this isn't what it looks like," Kevin tried to explain. "It's not what it looks like," Truman thundered. "What the hell do you think it looks like?" Kevin tried to answer, but he had no idea what to say. "How could you do something like this to my daughter?" Truman yelled as he threw his briefcase at Kevin. Lily wanted to explain that this wasn't Kevin's fault, but Truman wouldn't listen to anyone. He was so furious. Phoebe tried to stand up so she could explain what had happened, but because she had been tied up for so long, her legs had gotten numb. As she tried to get up, she winced and cried out in pain. This only made Truman even angrier. He raised his trembling hand and pointed at Kevin, growling, "I can't believe I trusted you to work in my company." "Please, this is all a misunderstanding," Kevin explained as he helped Truman to sit down on the sofa. Then he immediately went over to the three women and undid the belts that were still tied around their wrists and ankles. Kevin felt that it was hopeless to try to explain, so he just took Lily and Rachel and left the house. Truman was still trying to catch his breath. He turned to his daughter and asked her, "Phoebe, tell me honestly, did Kevin do this?" "Dad, what are you talking about? You've really misunderstood what happened," Phoebe reassured him. After taking a moment to catch his breath and compose himself, Truman finally said, "Phoebe, I only know what I saw." "Dad, can you please listen to my explanation? A bunch of hoodlums broke through the front door while we were making lunch. They tied us up and tried to beat up Kevin. He was about to explain the rest to us when you came in. But believe me, it wasn't Kevin's fault." Truman still wasn't convinced, but he trusted his daughter. "Well, if you say so, but that's not what I saw." His voice trailed off as he tried to accept her explanation. "Dad, you still don't believe me?" Phoebe said in an exasperated tone. She stomped her foot on the floor in frustration. Her father had Kevin all wrong. He was a huge help with her appraisals, and he even got someone like Drake to back down and leave the store peacefully. Actually, even though she trusted Kevin, there was still something mysterious about him. Truman let out another long sigh. He wasn't sure what to think. While this was going on, Kevin was driving Lily and Rachel back into the city. He simply didn't understand Truman's reaction when he walked into the house. "I didn't know Truman had such a quick temper," Kevin said to Lily. "What are you talking about? The whole thing was your fault." "How could it be my fault? I didn't tie you up," Kevin said helplessly. Rachel, who had been very quiet until now, suddenly said, "It's getting late. Just drop me off at the corner up ahead. I'll call for a ride home." "Don't worry, Rachel. It's no trouble at all. Kevin can take you home while I stop by the market to buy some vegetables." Lily then turned to Kevin and asked him, "What do you want for dinner? I'm cooking." Kevin was very shocked to hear her say that. They'd been married for almost 3 years, and he couldn't remember when Lily had ever offered to cook. This put Kevin in a good mood, and he quickly headed for the market. When they got there, Kevin said to Lily, "Wait for me here after you're done. I'll pick you up right after I drop Rachel off." When Lily was there, Rachel always felt a little more at ease, but when she was alone with Kevin, she immediately clammed up, unsure how to act. "Don't be too nervous. I'm not that scary," Kevin said with a smile as he pulled out of the parking lot. "I'm not nervous," Rachel replied quickly. Ever since she found out about Kevin's true identity, every time she thought about how she'd always treated him, she felt a little ashamed and regretted her actions. Kevin glanced at her in the rearview mirror. He had an idea about what she was thinking. "Don't worry about the past. You and Lily are good friends, and you were just protecting her because you thought she was suffering with me." "No, I didn't," Rachel replied so quietly he could barely hear her. "I know you're good for Lily, so I want to give you some great news. I'm getting ready to open the biggest hotel in Chicago, and I've decided to ask you to be the vice president." "Really?" Rachel replied excitedly. "Of course it's true, but I need to know soon, so please don't take too long to decide." He'd already made an agreement with Mitchell Cook. The two of them were going to join forces and go into the food and beverage industry in Chicago. "Just don't disappoint me, and if you accept my offer, I'll give you 3 times the industry standard." Rachel was dumbfounded and stammered. "Am I dreaming? You really want me to be the vice president?" "There's only one condition. I want you to help me keep an eye on Lily. If any man tries to get close to her, you must let me know immediately," Kevin said very seriously. "I won't let you down," Rachel replied excitedly. At that very moment, at the Jones mansion, Grandma Jones was sitting with the top members of the family. She looked despondent. I called everyone here today to discuss something that's very important for our future. Lily now has a controlling share in our company. Does anyone have an idea what we can do about this? Grandma Jones had been miserable ever since Tyler gave Lily 60% of the company's shares. Lily had instantly replaced her as the most important member of the family. But what could Grandma do about it? Grandma, you can talk to Lily nicely and ask her to give you some of her shares, Jason said with an evil smile. Even if she gave me 10%, she would still have half the shares. Don't worry. When Lily signs the transfer paperwork, we can slip another document underneath the contract. Before Jason finished speaking, they all knew what he meant. It was devious, but it might work. Grandma, don't forget that Tyler Dawn gave Lily an import-export company. This was actually what Jason hated the most. He really didn't know why Tyler had been so generous to Lily. Grandma Jones perked up when he said this. If she could get back the company's shares, she could start another company and finally put the Jones family back on top. 5 days later, in the CEO's office of Williams Media, Kevin looked intently at the documents on his desk. Mr. Williams, as soon as the market opens this morning, our company's shares are expected to drop by 20%. What's behind this? Kevin asked as he looked at the documents and then at his computer screen. About 3 days ago, someone started to manipulate the shares of the largest companies in Chicago, Miss Wilson explained. Kevin sat back slowly in his chair and muttered, I can't believe they were able to set this up in just a few days. It must have taken a lot of work. Mr. Williams, do you know what happened? Miss Wilson asked in surprise. Ever since Kevin took over Williams Media, he hadn't been very active in his role as CEO. He had been busy with a lot of other things, from antique appraisals to herbal supplements. Miss Wilson helped to keep things going smoothly, as she always did. But Miss Wilson never thought that Kevin, who was hardly ever in his office, would know anything about the matter. Please go down to the first floor and wait. We'll have a few important visitors stopping by. Yes, sir. Since Kevin didn't give any more details than that, Miss Wilson naturally didn't dare to ask who they were. After she left, Kevin slapped his desk and took out his phone to make a call. Hello, Kevin. What's the matter? Uncle Thomas, you know very well what's the matter. There's no point in hiding it. That's right, Kevin. The Williams family did this. Why? You know perfectly well why we did this, Kevin. Your performance lately has made everyone unhappy. Your grandfather thinks that you're getting carried away. You need something to bring you down to earth and keep you from following the wrong path. This is for your own good. How can you even say that? Aren't you afraid that I'll take back the $3 billion that I lent the family? Kevin, if you want your money back, I can transfer it to you right now. However, if you want to use it to save Williams Media, it won't work, Thomas said gravely. This is your grandfather's decision. I advise you to come back and apologize to your family. We can still work this out. It looked like Kevin didn't have any options left.
Hi, Kevin here. If you're wondering what happens next, then stay tuned on the Pocket FM Universe channel for more episodes.